I'm so incredibly thrilled you're joining us today because we're about to dive into this literally mind-bending concept from a source text called DNA Alchemy, the sacred art of singing the codes. You know, if you've ever looked in the mirror and thought of your body as just, well, a biological machine running on autopilot, get ready to have that idea completely flipped on its head. The text actually proposes that our DNA isn't some fixed destiny. It's not a rigid decree of fate. Instead, it describes DNA as a living, changing manuscript, an ancient, totally dynamic text. And the best part? The consciousness inhabiting your body right now? That's the scribe.
So right off the bat, that brings us to a pretty massive question. Are we prisoners of our own genes? Now, for decades, conventional wisdom told us, yeah, absolutely. We were essentially taught that we're bound by our inherited traits. You know, ancestral flaws, predetermined outcomes, the whole shebang. But this explainer is framed around a completely different paradigm. We're going to explore what the text actually says about whether we're truly locked into our biology, or if we might actually hold the power to rewrite it.
To really get this, we're moving away from what you could call the grim old model. That's the idea that your DNA is just this fixed blueprint dictating an inevitable physical decline. Honestly, it's a super passive way to live, right? Instead, the source is pulling us into the era of epigenetics. This is the modern revelation that genes are actually responsive. They're malleable. To use this really beautiful metaphor from the text, your DNA is a living manuscript, and its pages can be actively turned, highlighted, or even crossed out. You aren't just sitting back reading the book of your life, you're actively editing it.
So, let's move right into Section 1. Beyond the fixed blueprint. Okay, here's the core definition of DNA alchemy, straight from the source material. It defines it as the practice of working with DNA as a living text. Now, notice the key variables the author points out here: thought, feeling, frequency, and intention. The text actually argues that these elements act as this subtle environment that can literally awaken dormant genetic codes. And just to be clear, the source is very specific that this isn't about trespassing on some forbidden biological ground. No, it's about conscious engagement. It's about remembering that the literal codes of life have always been waiting for your voice.
The text puts this so beautifully. It says, what the environment whispers, the genome answers. Wow, just think about that for a second. That carries a profound biological implication. The source is basically telling us that our subtler environments, our quietest thoughts, our lingering feelings, our internal frequencies, they are deeply, literally heard by our biology. The double helix is essentially dancing to the exact song your consciousness is singing.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Biology and Quantum Consciousness.
So, diving into Dr. Bruce Lipton's findings, as cited in the text, it turns out the cell membrane acts as this sensory interface. Usually we only think about biochemical signals, right? Hormones, the food we're eating, toxins we're trying to avoid, but there's this whole other category, vibrational signals. The text highlights that the cell membrane is actively listening to the field around it. It's actually translating the electromagnetic symphony of your thoughts, your emotions, and your sustained intentions into directives that govern genetic expression. Basically, the cell doesn't just eat, it listens. This means every single emotion is a biological broadcast. When you hold fear in the quiet corridors of your mind, the text says you're instructing the body to defend and contract. You're prioritizing survival, but at the strict cost of growth. But love actually acts as an instruction for the body to expand, to regenerate and reach for higher patterns of coherence. Your DNA isn't deaf. It's constantly responding to the accumulated symphony of whatever broadcast you happen to be sending it.
Which perfectly sets up Section 3, the healing power of sound.
The source really digs into the fascinating work of Mitchell Gaynor here, who actually studied the direct influence of sound on cellular structures. Gaynor used coherent, intentional vibrations, specifically relying on tools like singing bowls, toning, and chanting. And the text reports that these aren't just, spiritual adornments or feel-good hobbies. They act as actual, literal, biological interventions. By introducing these specific frequencies, the text says we can influence genetic expression through biophotonic and acoustic signaling. Essentially, sound is creating a brand new harmonic environment for your cells to thrive in.
Look at this quote. The DNA molecule itself, responsive to frequency, bends toward health when bathed in coherent sound, just as a plant turns its face to the nourishing sun. I mean, what a vivid way to illustrate such a major shift in how we view health. It completely transforms healing from this external conquest, where we're essentially trying to force the body to obey, into an internal communion. You're simply creating this living, breathing garden of frequencies where the codes of vitality can just naturally be called forth.
Let's see how we actually apply this in Section 4, Practicing DNA Alchemy.
So how does this all translate into a daily practice? Well, the text recommends 4 specific steps to refine your vibrational field. Step 1, coherent breathing. Step 2, heart-focused meditation. Step 3, intentional sound. And step 4, sacred visualization. And the author really emphasizes here that you shouldn't just view these as rituals of hope. Nope, they're presented as active, tangible levers. When you engage in these practices, you're using real instruments of instruction to literally lift or lower the patterns of your unfolding biology.
But, and this is absolutely crucial, there is a very important caveat here. The text explicitly states that DNA responds to communion, not command. This process is not mechanical. You can't just shout orders at your cells like some kind of drill sergeant and expect them to fall in line. It relies entirely on relational authenticity. Your genome responds to your lived truth. It responds to the sincere, vibrational integrity of a person who has truly aligned their thoughts, words, and deeds. It's all about being in genuine harmony with the field you are creating.
And that brings us to Section 5, You Are Not a Prisoner.
The text delivers an incredibly powerful manifesto here. It says, inherited wounds are not chains forged in absolute iron. You were never meant to be a victim of your inheritance. The traumas of your ancestors, the biological errors of past environments, the text asserts that these are merely patterns of information. That's it. They are not permanent fixtures. They are literally just waiting for a greater song, a higher frequency to come along and transform them.
And that really brings us to the core philosophy of this whole text. You are the living intersection of memory and possibility. The art of DNA alchemy, according to the source, is actually the art of remembrance. It's this conscious act of calling the oldest, dormant parts of your body, parts forged in the literal fires of stars, back into harmony. You are inviting your genome to remember its highest possibilities and step into this radiant unfolding.
You are a singer of codes. I love that. It's such a striking line. It really emphasizes your sovereign nature. The text frames human consciousness as a living act of alchemy. It means you are the vital bridge between the unseen vibrational field and the physical biological form. You are the one orchestrating the entire symphony. Which brings us to this haunting, but honestly beautiful final thought from the text. And the codes are listening still. They are listening patiently, inexorably, right at this very second. So I'm going to leave you with a provocative question to take away from our explainer today. Take a good look at your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions. What will you broadcast today?
Thank you for watching. If something in this resonated with you, then you're already closer than you think. If you're ready to go deeper, there's a link below to my book, Quantum Healing Codes, Unlock the New Science of Self-Rejuvenation. This isn't theory, it's a framework you can actually use. Tap the link below and step into it.